It's a general proposition in our country. White civilians are more likely to be beneficiaries of police action, while Black and Hispanics and other civilians of color are generally more likely to be targets of police action. The disproportionate frequency of contacts and negative experiences with law enforcement detrimentally influences how people of color perceive police actions and engage with larger political processes. Here in Lewisboro, according to Chief Alfano's records, there have been no official civilian complaints regarding misconduct for close to 20 years. Now, that doesn't mean that there hasn't been any police misconduct or mistreatment of persons of color. It just means there haven't been any formal complaints about it for a long time. But in looking forward, and I was looking at Reverend Edelman's letter, and it's absolutely clear the text of Executive Order 203 requires this committee to address any racial bias and disproportionate policing of communities of color and seek to reduce any racial disparities in policing. And in your letter, the Reverend indicates, which is correct, we have to carefully construct channels whereby BIPOC residents feel safe sharing their stories. And one component of this is on a going forward basis, and that's in the chief's draft, is implicit bias training for the police. I, for one, think that that should be broader in our community. I think that that should be broadened out to all employees and volunteers in our community. I think that would be beneficial in participating in implicit bias training. And I wanted to give a specific suggestion going forward. I think that it's important, and I put this in my email to everyone, I'd recommend on a going forward basis that we have an individual who can be specifically charged with the responsibility of receiving and investigating, if and when appropriate, any future issues or complaints which may arise. And those should be able to be made in a comfortable forum and on a confidential basis. And it should be someone, and I think we have a town board meeting on Monday. I'm gonna bring this up to the town attorney to find some suggestions as to the best persons to fill that role for our community. On a going forward basis, there just has to be a way where anyone and everyone feels comfortable raising any issues that may come up in the future with our police or anyone else associated with our town. So that's one concrete suggestion in fulfilling the executive order and how to go forward.
Just a question, can anybody hear me? My microphone wasn't working before. Yes? Okay, thank you. I saw Mr. Ross raised his hand, so I'll wait to speak until he's finished.
Rich, I saw what you responded, and I would just say that getting a person to do that, it was just fortuitous to me that just on the news today that whoever the head of the harassment in New York City, he had to resign after 20-some years because they found in his emails he was using all sorts of racial slurs and a bias. I just would not feel comfortable stating that it was one person that we could come to, because that just goes to, we would have to pray that that person would be open to hearing what others have to say. And the whole bit about minorities coming forward and sharing, sure, we probably hadn't in 20 years had any reports, but that doesn't mean that they didn't occur.
That's exactly what I said, for sure.
Yeah, no, I am agreeing with you on that point. I am just thinking that your suggestion of having the one person on the town, that's putting too much faith. I don't have that much faith in human nature, given the
I'm flexible as far as whether that, speaking for myself personally, whether that's one person or a small group, And I be the first one to say we should get some guidance as to the best way to provide that to the community. So, and we should get some input on the best way to do that. Myself, as a member of the town board, would want to get some more input on the best way to implement that going forward.
My suggestion would be 3.
Okay.
Mr. Parsons, can I speak? Peter?
We can all hear you.
Okay, thank you. I thought Peter was speaking, so I wanted to wait. I also too jotted down some thoughts in response to Reverend Edelman's letter, and my comments in response to her recent letter to this committee, labeling our work up to date as, at best, a rubber stamp of the status quo, and at worst, a flagrant farce. While I understand her concerns, I take exception to her allegations. As a mostly white committee, while we may reflect the demographics of this community, we need to be extra careful to make sure we listen to the concerns of all community members. Speaking personally, one thing I know for sure is that I will never know what it is like to walk in the shoes of a person of color, to experience racial bias, or to know what it is like to raise a child or a young adult who's a person of color. All I can do is try to understand. I have gained knowledge from representing people in the criminal justice system, from speaking to people who have experienced racial bias, attending forums, and taking the advice of people like our fellow committee member who recommended informative films to help me better understand. All we can do is do the best we can with what we have. If we look back to our first meeting, we heard from a number of residents who are people of color who support our police department and did not feel that they have ever experienced any racial bias in town. We heard from a few town board meetings, however, those who spoke of racial bias to themselves or someone that they know, but none, to my memory, spoke of it at the hands of our police department. There has been no record of any such complaints against our police. I understand that Supervisor Parsons reached out directly to other minority families, but for whatever reasons, they declined to come forward. Perhaps it was because they felt if they came out in support of the police, they would be chastised by some of their neighbors who display BLM signs on their lawns or on their social media pages. Or maybe they felt that if they complained about their experiences they have had with the local police, that they would have their families at risk of being singled out by law enforcement in the future. Or maybe they just want to live their lives and be left alone because they never asked to become the poster child for these issues one way or the other. I don't know the answer. Perhaps the committee can borrow from the reporting procedures suggested by Chief Alfano in the first draft of our report and some of the suggestions of Mr. Sclaren here tonight. And maybe before we come to or reach any final conclusions, we can reach out to our minority community with the opportunity for a less public way to give us their perspective before this committee finalizes its report. So does racism exist in our town? Of course it does. It exists everywhere. But does it exist within our police department or in the manner they carry out police protocol, policy, and procedure, or in the interactions with the public? So far, the answer has been no. Can those protocols, policies, and procedures be strengthened? Yes. However, we should not try to manufacture a problem in our town that does not exist. This committee was formed for police oversight. It is not a town-wide committee on racial injustice and inequity. My understanding is that one of our town board members took on the task of creating such a committee last year, but I have not heard anything further about it or its plans thus far. So my suggestion is this. We have a draft in front of us, and I believe on page 8 or 9, it talks about reporting, and it suggests several methods of reporting, whether it be to the chief of police, whether it be to through the town to the supervisor, whether it be by anonymous letter or anonymous communication, that that all such communications be accepted and investigated. And I think Chief Alfano even suggested that in cases where, as Mr. Ross had indicated, you can't necessarily just have this all fall into the hands of one person. And he pointed to an example in the city. That in turn, if such internal investigation cannot be properly handled internally, that such perhaps be turned over to the New York State Troopers Internal Investigation Unit and or the District Attorney's Office. as alternatives. We are a small town, we are a small number, and checks and balances have to be in place. Thank you.
Okay, one thing I'd like to point out, which people seem to be forgetting, that if
Been trying to
you,
talk now for several rounds of conversation. Can Charlotte please be given the floor?
yes, certainly.
Good evening. It takes everything I have to come to these meetings. And that is not a reflection of the Lewisboro Police Department, because I do believe that you guys are doing the best that you can. And there are specific issues that the Black community and minority communities have with policing. So I can tell you for a fact that if I experience something in this town, I am not going to go to a town board member, and I am not going to go to the police for anything in reference to racial bias, because I have to continue to live here. I've experienced harassment just from being on this board. Andrea, I found your comment to Mr. Ross's his letter condescending and rude, frankly, that you didn't see it as an invitation to have a discussion, and then you kind of backhandedly said, but you watched James Baldwin. You're right. You can never know what it's like to walk in Black shoes. And so I came on this, I decided to do this against everything in my being, because I'm raising a Black son in this town who has to drive. And I am in constant fear when he is in his car of police. The last place I would go would be the New York State Police, because I've been followed from 138 to my driveway with my son driving by the New York State Police. So what we're talking about, what we're supposed to be talking about, is reimagining policing. Nobody is calling our police department racist. What we are trying to do is bring awareness to how some of us feel, what ideas we can maybe bring to help us feel secure, to help us create a level of trust, because it's not there. It's not. So you can candy coat it and try to make it seem, oh, well, it's not, that's not my problem, or racism is not a problem in the police department. Racism is a problem in Lewisboro. Period. Whether it may not be happening to you, but that doesn't mean it's not happening.
That's what I said.
Doesn't mean it's not
Charlotte.
happening.
That's exactly what I said. I will never know. I will never know.
I don't even know. I'm trying to figure out why I was asked to be on this, quite frankly. And I'm wondering what other minority members of the community were asked, because I have no background in policing. I mean, I've lived here for 20 years, and my job since I have been here and what I have raised my son to do is to avoid the police by any means necessary. I have taught my son that if he is in a car accident, do not call the police first. You call your mother, because of fear.
Charlotte,
Mr. Parsons, last night at the Democratic convention, at the Democratic meeting, you said that somebody said you mentioned that people of color who are of affluence don't experience racism in the same way that other less affluent Black people experience it. And I'm gonna tell you what, that's bullshit. I said it.
I've been told that by people of color.
Well, that's a lie.
Normally, people who are not so
They're
affluent.
telling you what you want to hear, because it doesn't matter how affluent you are. You're just as likely to experience the same treatment, whether you're in a Mercedes or a Volkswagen.
Charlotte.
So affluence has nothing to do with racism. Nobody sees how much money you have. They see the color of your skin.
Charlotte, I think you answered your own question. I think you just completely outlined the value that you have to this committee, because you are one of maybe two on this committee that are raising young people in this community and in communities like it. And none of us have that experience. And what you teach your child when he gets behind the wheel of that car, I've represented young people in that situation who get pulled over for no reason, who get harassed for no reason. But I only experience it from the representation part. I don't live it as a parent. And that's the value that you have to this committee. You give reality to it.
What I'd like to know is, how do we improve on the current situation?
You're not going to get minority members of this community to come out and talk about how they've been treated. You're not. They're not going to do it. You know why?
Mr. Ross has.
Fear.
Well, I just want to pick up on something that Charlotte said, which is kind of telling. If in looking at the New York State executive law, and there was a mention about New York State police, the executive law, as I read it, talks about local police departments. This executive order exempts the New York State police from being looked at in the same
Yes,
way.
and the DEC police. Any police force which reports directly into the state is exempt.
Well, that's a huge, I mean, that's picking up on what Charlotte is talking about. The New York State Police, who patrols our town, is exempt from this review based upon Governor Cuomo's executive order.
Correct. I'm not saying that's right. I'm just saying you're correct.
Should be leading by example.
How are we going to center the voices of Ron and Charlotte on this committee? Because I think that's what needs to happen. Ron just got cut off. He had his finger raised.
Oh, sorry, Ron.
I'm just speaking to Charlotte. Charlotte, I thank you, but I'm also ready. I could just, I don't know, do it. I've tried to do what you've done. I've shut my mouth. My family has made me swear that I would not tell their incidences. But because of what you said, I'm going against what I said. I wasn't going to come on and tell them what to do, because my bottom line is, even in my letter, if I need to tell you what to do, that means that you're a white person who just came to this earth this afternoon. I don't need to tell you what to do. You need to treat me as if I were your son and Charlotte were your daughter, that I was your father, Charlotte was your mother. You don't need me to tell you. That is, I can't even begin to say it. But even though I promised my wife, my daughter, I would never tell their experiences here, no one except Charlotte could possibly have this. The first week I came here, it wasn't even yet 3 days. 7:30, around this same time, a knock at the door, New York State Trooper. I need to speak to you. Excuse me? Lower your voice. I stepped out onto my porch. What's the problem? Long story without going into it, my German Shepherd had chewed up a neighbor's dog, the house down on Ridgefield. I took him out into the back of my yard and said, this is where the attack happened. Now, if you can see that house, it's about 200 yards away from me. My understanding is that any animal in Lewisboro has to be leashed. The dog's on my property. He turns and said, you people don't understand what goes up here. And my exact words were, you just hit the fucking jackpot. Get the fuck off of my place and don't come back unless you have a warrant. That was my introduction. The third day in Lewisboro, you people don't understand what goes up here. In uniform, New York State Trooper.
This is what we deal with
Don't
all the
ask
time.
me, because I won't tell you why I took my daughter out of John Jay High School and sent her to Kennedy. And if you think it had nothing to do with race, you're fooling yourself. I'm paying taxes in a town and had to send my daughter to a parochial school. And I swore I would not do that. Charlotte, I wasn't going to let you be the only one saying that.
Yeah, but we want you to come out and say all this, because this is how we're going to make it better.
David, my son was making a career in the military, in uniform, at least twice. And I'm going against, I promised him I wouldn't say this, laying down on 35 in uniform twice, coming home.
That's,
Yes,
Mr. Ross, that, you know what? That pisses me off.
Yes, it should.
Myself or any of
This
my
kid was making 20 years in the Seabees, had got tapped for the SEALs, but he's got to be face down on 35 because he's coming to visit his parents.
and that makes me sick to my stomach. My stomach is turning listening to this story.
I won't even tell you, no, because my wife might hear me. Please, she could have all of you all going if she told you how they treated her. I promised them I wouldn't say anything. Charlotte, I'm going to put you to blame for this. My son.
I'll take it. I'll take it. Because I told my family I was going to sit back and not say anything either. But to say nothing is to be implicit. And,
Right.
you know, a lot of the
That's my
times the
thing. You
reasons
saw
we
that.
don't speak up in this community is fear.
Right.
It's fear. We are afraid. We're outnumbered.
No, now I will give Ms. Rindo part of the credit. Part of it is she threw out 3 possible answers. I just want to be left alone. I treat people here decently. That's all I'm asking, that you treat me the way I treat you. I taught. I had almost nearly a 50-year career, and over half of it was in the classroom. Yeah, the last 25 years were in administration. But I taught in Bensonhurst. I taught on the Lower East Side. I've taught Chinese, and there's not a kid, white, black, brown, or Puerto Rican, who can stand up and say I ever mistreated them any other way. You can find New Yorkers 40 years old who will tell you Mr. Ross had one thing. He had the Derek, Kelly, and Lauren rule. In other words, I treated the kids in my class the way I treated my own, and I expected the same thing out of them. That's all Black people around America are asking of the police today. Treat us like you would treat your own. But you put my son down on 35, face down in uniform on 2 separate occasions.
Now, what agency did that, Mr. Ross?
Lewisboro Police. And if a drunken commando down in, Little Creek in Norfolk had not run into him on a motorcycle and spent the 11 hours in surgery, he would probably still be in the Navy now. He had been tapped for the SEALs. He was in training, but face down in Lewisboro.
And if you don't mind me asking, about what year?
Jesus, I was at Mount Vernon, so we're talking in the 90s.
Okay.
Around 2000, yeah. It was before I had my operation. Yeah.
Well, again, I apologize. I mean, that's just unacceptable.
I have some of my best friends are police officers. The reason I've got out a couple speeding tickets is because I have a New York State Trooper honorary badge. I tell you, I don't have time to hate.
So I know you, like, what can we do? I mean, there's got to be something. You have to have some sort of idea that could help. I mean, as part of like an SRO or instructing in the school. Like I wanted
to
change a flat tire in the
who
high
you're
school.
taking in. You've got to look at who you're hiring. I had bad teachers. People, half of the superintendents in the country just try to get rid of their people. We don't try to go. Some years ago, when I was doing graduate study, I did a thing in New York. We have something called a 30-20A process. That's where we go after a teacher's license. In the entire state of New York, the year that I did it, this was back in the 90s, they got rid of 6 people. Hell, I had 6 people in my high school that could have gotten rid of a license. It's a joke. Same thing with other police. You go from one town to the next, to the next, to the next.
And they're finally stepping up and they're actually fixing this issue though.
Get rid of the bad apples. You know,
and that's happening.
Yeah, stop the line. That thing that I gave you, one thing when you were writing it, if another officer comes up on the scene, he doesn't know. And I remember saying to you back in the meeting, no, that's a get away free card. Hey, that if I come up, let's using the Rodney King situation. Okay, I drive up while they are beating him. Okay, the way it goes, I'm not supposed to say anything because I don't know what went on before that. If I see 8 guys beating a guy who's already handcuffed, down on the street, I should be able to tell that. And those guys should be, well, hey, let the courts decide. But to say I need to keep my mouth shut because I didn't see what was going on before I got there. I know what I did see.
Well,
But
Ron,
Cuomo's current budget
Yes, sir.
assuming it passes,
Mhm.
have, which it will, because I think it's an executive budget, includes a lot greater ability to research the background and the history of any police officer who somebody decides to hire.
Yeah.
Because to date, it has been extraordinary. Well, criticize me if I'm wrong, Dave, but it has been very difficult often to find out what a police officer's record was.
Absolutely. Now they're going to be red listed. There's a national database. So basically, if they got fired from a police job in Florida, they could come up here and technically we just call and make a background check and, obviously do all their other credit history and everything else. But now there's an actual database that's going to be uploaded and you have to abide by it as per federal law.
Well,
I'm not saying that will cure everything. It certainly won't, but it's one little step on the road to trying to improve policing.
Ron, as an educator, let me ask you this question. Is there a way as part of a hiring process or a background process, you can actually flush out, I don't know, any kind of testing or something to see if someone you're contemplating hiring is going to have biases that are not going to make them, as you eloquently talked about earlier, treat people like they're their children? Can you see that before they get on the job? Is there a way to, whether it's somebody who's teaching or whether somebody in law enforcement or whatever position, is there any kind of test?
Is Mr. Siciliano here?
Yes, I think so.
Oh, because there's a video circulating of teacher using the word nigger, I said it, in the classroom, and he got a suspension. Circulated all over. Every kid in this town has it on their phone. They weren't dismissed. They were suspended. What's going on at the high school is unbelievable. My biggest regret is that I let my son go to John Jay. With all the taxes that I pay to live in this town. And the only reason I'm still here is because he's still in college and this is his community and he grew up here and this is his home. But trust and believe, as soon as he graduates, if not before he graduates from college, my house will be on the market. I will not stay in this town. I've seen it firsthand. I've seen kids grow up in my home, coming here, eating here, sleeping here, staying here, turn around and call us niggers. So the problem is bigger than policing in our community.
That's why I said what I said in that little short response to Reverend Edelman. The policing part is just a manifestation of the bigger problem. We've got to come to grips with treating people, equally of color. And it's uncomfortable. You can see that with Charlotte and I talking. But it's the history of where we are. And I guess the only hope I can give you is once you get past that, you might see that you have more in common with people than you think that you do, in that you have been lied to. I go to St. John's, and in the 25 years that we have lived here, my wife and I are the only Black couple there. Now we have two mixed race couples where either the husband is Black and the wife is white, or in the other case, she's Black and he's white. You have to ask yourself, now, how is it in 25 years they can't find any Black people? It's because historically, I looked at what you put out this past week, David. I think it's 86% white. That doesn't just happen. That's what we mean when we say systemically there is racism. And some of the few people in the town, who are close friends that I talked to, we've had those discussions. In a couple of cases, they stopped speaking, they went and came back. But in the end, when they get past that, they find, hey, okay, we have more in common. I didn't see it that way. Okay, so maybe what Ms. Redden No, it's saying, no, you don't have to understand. You can't walk in that shoes, but you're a human being. You can feel empathy. If the truth be told, when I went to the University of North Dakota, Grand Forks, I was the first person in the history of that school, the first Black person they had ever had. Now, if the truth be told, they did not discriminate. You know why? Because there was only one of me. But I still have, I would get emotional when I would give speeches sometime of standing in Grand Forks and watching a grown man and a grown woman with a 6-year-old kid step off the sidewalk to let a white couple go past. You know who they were? They weren't Black. That's how they treated Native Americans in Grand Forks, North Dakota in the 60s when I went there. The only reason they didn't treat Black people like that is because there weren't any Black people. When I got there and walked into my room, there were 3 stick-em notes on my door: to Bismarck, to Grand Forks, and to Fargo, to be on the TV station that night. I've actually had white people touch me at the University of North Dakota, Grand Forks. That was the first living human being they had seen, Black. Now, how you could get that far in your life in college and never talk to someone. And if you think that wasn't a cultural shock out of me, I had just graduated that June from Howard University and was starting my first year of law school at the University of North Dakota. To go from Howard University to the University of North Dakota. You want to talk about cultural shock? Somebody touch you. And yes, they use the N-word.
I mean, it's also little things. I mean, when you see, when there's a sporting event at the high school and it's Mount Vernon or New Rochelle and it's basketball games and football games, the police presence is like, and I have never, ever seen anything like that.
God, you said it, not me.
No, I'm going to say it because what is the point of me being here if I don't? I have never seen so many police at sporting events, and it only happens when we're playing a predominantly Black school. But I can tell you, as somebody who lives in this town, when I'm sitting in the stands watching basketball, it isn't those people from Mount Vernon and New Rochelle throwing racial slurs around. It's not. In fear. And it only creates more fear when it's 15 police cars at a basketball game because there's some Black people in the community. How do you think that makes those of us who live here feel? When I have my friends down county are like, why do you live up there? I would never live up there. I would never send my kids to school up there. What do you think that is doing to your son? And I have to wrestle with this all the time. And my husband and I had to wrestle with, because my husband is white, had to wrestle with teaching our son about racial identity, because it's all fine when they're little kids. But I watched my little boy go from being a little boy to being perceived as a threat because he became a man and because he became a man of color.
Stephen, you've had your hand raised for an enormously long time.
No, thank you for the opportunity, and Biancone, thank you for sharing your experience. You know, at the high school, in the events of last spring, after the murder of George Floyd, there's been a tremendous amount of work being done at the district level. We have contracted with NYU, and we do have groups working in terms of racial and equity justice initiatives. We do have a teacher, student, and alumni called All In, and a lot of that has been educating the staff as to the experiences of students of color, you know, BIPOC, LGBTQ, telling us what their experiences were during high school. We have a lot of alumni, and some are probably on this call tonight looking. And we have been really trying to take this year to educate ourselves as to, you know, what are our blind spots? What have we missed? And we understand the frustrations that, or we're beginning to learn more deeply, the frustrations that students have experienced at the high school. And again, we're not running away from it. But we are committed to working to change the culture. We have been working to change curriculum. We are becoming much more conscious of students of color seeing themselves reflected in the school, reflected in the administration, reflected in the staff, but it's going to take time. But I think there has been there has been movement in that area. And no, things still have, we do have work to do. No one is running from that. And students have been very clear to us is that, usually these things have happened, sometimes things have happened in plain view of teachers, and apparently things have not been reported, have not been taken care of, and things have happened outside of the earshot of anyone. And I'm sensitive to it as well. I don't want to see students mistreated in my high school, ever. And sometimes it can be very frustrating on our part, is that it's not that I don't believe you, I can't prove it. And we also have a culture of silence among kids, where there's the feeling of racism, homophobia, sexism, all of that is bad, but being a snitch is worse. And so there's just a tremendous amount of work that we are trying to do. And again, these forums are incredibly important.
Mr.
Stephen,
Siciliano,
could
I
I
have to
suggest
say, you guys, school can do as much as school can do with instruction, but it doesn't change, unfortunately, what goes on at home. And that's far outside the reach of the school. So the school can only do so much. And then it's the responsibility of our individual households and those of us who are parents to instill those values and the ability to be understanding and accepting in our children. And unfortunately, the school can't reach every home, nor can any of us on this committee. We can only send a message. So thank you. And we have a lot of work to do. And we have to take what Charlotte is saying and what Ron is saying and what you've contributed here and see how it translates into making our local Lewisboro Police Department better at what they do, and maybe identifying things that are going on under the radar. And that's all we can do. We can only do the best that we can do. I wish, and I'm sure many of us on the committee wish the same, that we could just flip a switch and change everything overnight, and we can't. So we just do the best we can, and we listen, and we try to teach our kids tolerance and how to deal with their parents who sometimes say really stupid stuff, and try to teach them that there's a better way. That's all we can do. But I have to tell you, listening to you, Charlotte, and listening to Ron and hearing the real stories makes an impression, because not a lot of people are willing to come forward and say anything. So, the only thing that I can suggest and how to incorporate what you've said and what still may be out there as information that can be learned from is to perhaps open up a forum to the public where they're able to share things anonymously. So there is no repercussions either way. Somehow, some way, just to get more information, because the two of you have been put on the spot and have come here voluntarily and allowed yourself to be put in this position. So thank you for that. But perhaps if we find some confidential way for others in the community to contribute to the conversation where they don't feel, they're going to be judged, that would be a good thing for the committee to take into consideration moving forward.
There's also got to be
Stephen, could I ask you to do something? I'd like you to spend some time with Dave Alfano and see if we can learn from what you've been doing, because part of what you've been doing, I think, is teaching your teachers to be more cognizant of this problem and to work on it. That's rather similar, possibly, to what Dave has to do. I was hoping for a yes, Stephen.
Oh, I'm shaking my head, yes.
Okay.
My understanding, there's a lot of people working in the background and organized to try to help the school. Is that correct?
Yes, that's the committees that have been formed, what's called All In.
Right.
So the equity and racial justice, that's connected with the school district in partnership with NYU.
So not all of you, Steve, to do that kind of work with the police department, right? Like maybe there's an organizational cut out for that work that we need to consult with.
We do have an SRO in the school. Is that something that Frank Seeker could be part of as well, Stephen?
Absolutely. I think there are lots of opportunities. I think you know, we're still as a staff, and again, there are large numbers of people who come out to the meetings. I just want to piggyback on something that I just recently heard in a training today. A phrase has really stuck with us, is that tolerance is not justice. And I think that's what people are seeking. And how do we associate the SRO in this work is something that we can get to. I think there can be an important role for him to play, is that once this process is finished, that the SRO can educate our students as to how policing is improving and how policing is now becoming more sensitive to the needs of the BIPOC community within Lewisboro. And so there is definitely a role to be played there.
Thank you.
I have a question, Stephen. These issues that you're trying to address now in the schools, in your research and what you've learned, is the prevalence of these concerns and issues any more or less than surrounding communities? Or is there any way to ascertain that?
I can't speak to other communities' experience. It's hard for me to talk about it. But again, if we're talking about systemic racism, then it is everywhere. And I think some of this work is getting people to embrace the tenets of critical race theory. I mean, you know, again, not to get, you know, political by any stretch, but, you know, the last administration in Washington, D.C. was, you know, dead set against having that become part of federal training, for example. And so, you know, that is something that if you are not used to hearing that, that is going to take some repetition. And so we do need the support of the entire community to allow us to look into this with that critical lens. And I think that also has been part of this work.
Wasn't it brought to the town board several months back that just such a committee in the community be formed and an initiative in the community be formed?
There is one. I'm pretty damn sure that there is one, because they just stuck a document on my desk the other day. Which
That's
they
what I
want-
mentioned earlier. I thought one of the town board members had taken
Yeah.
on the initiative of starting a committee, but I haven't seen anything on the town website or anywhere about their meetings or what they've been working on or what they're doing. So I don't know what progress they've made.
Neither do I, Andrea, but I do know that a document landed on my desk yesterday, I think, which they want to discuss, not at the board meeting on Monday, but on the board meeting 2 weeks from Monday.
It also would be important to put forth a resolution, right? The town board to put forth a resolution that we will do this work, that we will engage it, because it's not just about accepting, it's not just about teaching tolerance, right? It's about like a long, hardcore journey of justice for those voices that we've heard a little bit from tonight, but there's a lot more we probably haven't heard and we need to hear.
Town board member
Hey,
Tony Gonsalves has his hand up. I believe he might be.
Yeah, Peter, I was just gonna follow up on what you just said. So that committee has not been formed.
Oh,
We are starting to
who
work
wrote
on
the
that.
document?
Jane Crimmins wrote the document that we've been
Okay.
reviewing. Yes.
She also has her hand up, and I'm going to unmute her as well.
Yeah, let Jane say a few words to that.
Hi, I wasn't anticipating talking about this evening, but I'm happy that the opportunity has come up. And so this committee, as you can imagine, with all that's been going on in the community and all the conversations we've been having, that the committee hasn't been an easy one to form. And nonetheless, I put together a proposal to the town board to form this committee. The work that's been going on, I would say, has been community organizing work. It's been going and getting to know everybody in the community that is having these conversations, that is doing this work, and then trying to pull from those voices of color without putting all the onus on people of color. This is not easy work to do. And so right now I have this proposal out and it's being reviewed by some voices that I think need to see it before I propose anything as a white person to 4 other white people. And once we've had a chance to review that, we think by the February 22nd meeting, I'll be able to speak a little bit more to it. But there is a document on Mr. Parsons' desk and we are moving forward and the work is getting done.
Thank you, Jane.
If other community members want to get involved with the committee, Jane, who do they reach out to? Do they reach out to you or Tony or who?
Jane.
Sorry, I won't mute myself. I just muted
Sorry,
myself.
was I muted when I said Jane?
No, you didn't. Well, that will become more apparent as we finalize the committee, like the proposal. But people, it will be an open process as it is in any committee. We'll put something out on the town website and all of our messaging platforms, and people can apply. It'll be the same process that we use.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right. Does somebody else want to speak? Because there seems to be a pause in the conversation. In that case, how do we move on from here? I'd kind of like anybody who's got a real point of view this evening to write down some practical things that should be incorporated in this police reform document. Some of what we've said is kind of patently obvious. We should not be putting somebody to lie down on the road just because he's black. That officer shouldn't have a job, or not in this town. We need, on the other hand, there are some things I think that have been said that could be incorporated in this document. And I'd like those suggestions to come to Dave and or me. We will do our best to incorporate them. And then we will have another meeting to decide whether this is the document we want to send to the town board, and have a major public comment period when anybody is welcome to speak, whether they're on the committee or not.
I would just focus the committee members on page 7 of the draft document. There's a section complaint tracking. So that's a good starting point for anybody to take a look at with, additional points or revisions or modifications that people have. It's a good starting point, because that's kind of picking up where I was raising the issue as far as what can we do going forward to improve things and have an atmosphere where people can comfortably bring up issues and concerns they have on a going forward basis. And then they can be addressed in the way that they should be addressed.
I will give you one thought. We have an ethics committee in town, which, as far as I know, has done absolutely nothing in 10 years. It's still got a couple of very good people on it. Maybe we should appoint somebody to join them, and that should be one. If a complaint cannot be resolved by Dave or myself, anybody is welcome to take it to the ethics committee. I know they're welcome to take it to court too, but court is kind of a very tough thing to do if you're not enormously confident and if you don't have the money to support a case. It might be a lot easier to go in front of an ethics committee and to discuss it there.
Well, you said there's 2 members on that, Peter?
There are 2, and I wanted to add a third.
So maybe
And I think I've got an idea this evening as to who it should be.
Yes, maybe people on this committee could also give their input as to if that's a good vehicle and any role that anybody would want to play in connection with that.
Well, it's an existing one, which might make sense. And yes. I've got a pretty good idea of who I might like to get to join that committee, who's sitting in this committee tonight.
I think Moira had her hand up.
Oh, Moira, sorry, I didn't see it.
That's all right. At the hospital, we have an incident oversight committee, which I can put together and we have a mandate from our state regulatory authorities about what constituency is represented on that incident oversight committee. And of course, there's an investigator who is employed by the hospital to investigate complaints and incidents. And there's tracking mechanisms, and then there's required monthly meetings. And so it's a plan that I can easily sort of share, that could be replicated by either members of the ethics committee, or the ethics committee could be transformed into the incident review committee. And then from the incident review committee, it goes to the governing board. Their report goes to the governing board of the hospital. So again, you have an investigator who comes to the incident review committee. There's discussion and requirements there, conclusions, then reports up to the governing board. So it goes from one person to a committee that has representatives of a constituency, then on to the governing board.
What comprises
Can
an
you do me a
incident?
favor, Mara, and forward that to me?
Sure.
What comprises what comprises an incident? The use of force or anything unusual that happens?
We're a psychiatric hospital, so first, anytime there's a restraint of a patient, that of course comprises an incident. Then there can be as Chief Alfano and his department knows, there can be all sorts of other incidents that are required under the New York mental hygiene law to be investigated. So it's section 524, NYCRR, 14 NYCRR, section 524. Those are incidents.
Thank you.
Can I also make a suggestion? I myself have been going through the booklet that you forwarded to us, Peter, from the state, and I've been going through the enumerated topics that we're supposed to cover in the committee and what policies and procedures that we're supposed to review, and I've been marking them off one by one. So we are getting through to a great extent a lot of the things that are outlined in this very lengthy book that I know that you all have if you've printed out or you're looking.
160 pages, Andrew.
Yes, yes. And it's a good overview, and maybe we all want to just go through and make sure that in our opinions we've adequately covered the major topics that need to be touched upon. In addition,
Andrew, you're looking at the one that says August 2020 on the front cover?
Yes, I think so.
It looks like this.
I can't see what you're seeing at the moment. New York State Police Reform.
There it is.
That's it. That's
Can
it.
everybody see it?
Yes, that's it, Peter. Okay, I just wanted to
150
make sure.
pages. Yeah,
You have it in front of you, Andrew?
yes, I do.
Would you just look at page 5, just the first sentence? Would you read that?
Absolutely.
Just the first sentence, one sentence.
No, I have it highlighted.
Okay.
The purpose of the New York State Police Reform and Reinvention Collaborative is to foster trust, fairness, and legitimacy within communities throughout our state, and to address any racial bias and disproportionate policing of communities of color.
Thank you.
I'm hearing all the discussion about like policies and committees and stuff like that, but what I wish we could try to address also is just the perception of the police by BIPOC in our town. So how do we address that, right?
So,
Unfortunately, I think that many people in the town have have turned more sour on the police during the last year, which is unfortunate because it affects police morale. And unless you have a high morale, a lot of these things are blowing in the wind. That's my own thought.
I'm confused. I'm saying something different, I think, Peter. So I'm talking about, the perception, we heard Charlotte, for instance, talk about fear.
Mm.
How do we get at that? Isn't that important to this committee as well, the work of this committee, or at least the work of this community? And
Well, my biggest points, Nikki, would be start out while the kids are young as school resource officers, reading stories to young kids in elementary school. I personally had appointments last year, but COVID happened. But we were going to do coffee with a cop. We're going to do a safety day where kids could come out, play with the helicopter, play with the police cars. Meet us, greet us, have fun, hit the lights and sirens. Be our friend. What else do we have? I was going to teach the kids in the high school, what happens if you get pulled over by the police. Where's the license? What does your registration look like? What does your insurance card look like? Where to put your hands, just simple little things. So everyone's calm, play with the radar system, what we have, how it works. And then I was going to show them I was going to jack up a police car and change a flat tire. And again, Steven Siciliano gave me permission to do all this. And again, COVID happened and, it really put a damper on a lot of the community policing. But these were our initiatives, and that's what we're doing. Since I've been chief, recently in June of 2020, I enacted the requirement for all the officers to note the ethnicity of traffic summonses that they issue. It's mandatory. You can't print out a ticket without clicking that button. So now I could track that. I could have data, better data. I've recently reached out to New York State, the senator's office, for them to push. If you write a paper ticket, it doesn't have that ethnicity box to check. So I said, hey, you guys are the ones that supply us with the paper tickets. Why don't you put it on the paper tickets? So every police agency in the New York State will have to check an ethnicity of who they pulled over. Also, I purchased a new software system that we write all our reports on in our computers. We have them in every car now. And basically, it has many capabilities, but one particular one is being able to tracking encounters with minorities, and also red flags officers to the supervisor if there's more than if there's a pattern of a particular officer that say he's pulling over Hispanics, or he's pulling over Asians, or he's pulling over blacks. Now we have the supervisors see this and, red flag goes off. Now we know what's going on. We're staying on top of our men. Obviously, it all starts out with hiring, like Mr. Ross said. I'm very picky with my hiring. I can tell you, I could promise you that. So, but we're trying. We're doing the best we can, and I'm open for suggestions. By all means, I have an open door policy. If anybody wants to call me, come here, send me an email, whatever.
Rich, you asked me earlier how I went about it. David just answered the question for me. When you are interviewing, I used to always tell the school board the most important job they had was picking me. And once they picked me, my most important job was picking the principals. It comes down to leadership, and very clearly listening to David over these last few years. Don't take it the wrong way, but it's just a huge compliment. It's clear you enjoy your job. I'm worried about the police officer who is so fragile. I mean, that Peter, I guess I'm going against what you are saying at this point. I don't think they have lost any support in the community. In fact, I think they've garnered support as a backlash to the Black Lives Matter, the few signs that have been put up. You do your job because we have a saying in education, I didn't take the job because it was a good job. It was a calling. If David had stayed in it this long, he really got into it. A real police officer gets into it because you want to help someone. You're trying to do good. You go into nursing. I don't understand why, because a few people put out a sign that said Black Lives Matter, that the response has to be in Lewisboro and across the country. I've got to put up 20 signs of supporting the police. Are you so fragile that if the community doesn't support you, you can't do your job? You don't think a guy gets on a lobster boat off of the coast of Alaska is not risking his life to pick up a few damn fish, or someone who's going out on an oil derrick or who is in a coal mine for 20 years and getting black lung. No, no one when I was teaching in the South Bronx or that out in Bed-Stuy or that Brooklyn, I needed someone to say they love teachers. I did it because it was a calling. This guy is staying in it for 20 years or that more. Yeah, there's a possibility he could have a traffic stop and get shot. Well, hell, I could have been coming home from night school up on Fordham Road, carrying $5,000 or $6,000 in a black paper bag and depositing it in the bank because I was the night school principal. Didn't stop me from being a teacher. I hate to make you all think this, but when I was superintendent in Mount Vernon, I was getting all sort of national press, and a couple of people here in the town start to push my name around to be maybe superintendent here in Katona, Lewisboro. One of the members of my church showed me a letter, a 2-page letter of what they were saying about the black blank, blank, blank N-word, every 5th word of not God, just because he lives in the town, we don't want him in the school. They passed it around the town.
Mm-hmm.
And I know the lady, she's still alive. Every time I see her at Stop and Shop, she tries to go down a different aisle because one of her own friends turned her in, said, I didn't realize she was that disgusting.
Mm-hmm.
I had a board member of the school board who said he had to go home and wash because he didn't believe they could be that there. That's since I've been here, David. Just because they even brought my name up. I said I wasn't going to go into it. Charlotte, it's all on you. You owe me a drink.
I'll take it. I'll take it.
Mr. Ross, so I
Okay,
think,
we need to talk about it because if we don't, then people are not aware. And again, I will say, just because it's not happening to you does not mean it's not happening. Dave, you have a great reputation as far as policing in this community, and I want to commend you for that. And
real quick too, I just
my fear is not based on anything that is done in this town with policing. It's systemic, the same way racism is systemic. And so if there was a way, I mean, I thought this was about reimagining policing. I mean, if we can find a way to help police engage more with people of color, to help them feel safe here, because I have to tell you, I do not feel safe in this community anymore. I don't go out at night by myself anymore in this area at all. I was born in 1966, to showing my age, but this is the first time I can remember, especially these past 4 years with the last administration. It's not my intention to get political, but I'm being honest. I've never been afraid in America until now. I have walked around this country free, black, and beautiful, and I don't feel that way anymore. I have people, I had a I can't breathe face mask on at the Shell station at Cross River, and had a group of adult men who live in this town collectively come and give me the finger. I'm gonna call the police. That's not even worth your time to me. You have more important things to do
Charlotte, I would
than
still
deal
like
with
to hear
that.
about it though. I would love to hear about that though. I really would, because we have cameras all over there, and you know.
It happens. I mean,
But at least to take the report, just at least so it shows data that this is actually happening.
So,
Remember, very often if you will complain about something, and I'm not saying you need to complain about everything, although you may be one-on-one, very often the police have a camera, or somebody has a camera which recorded the event.
But even if you don't want to do anything with it, at least you're talking about it, and maybe you feel a little better getting it off your chest. I mean, again, I have an open door. I know you feel a little uncomfortable talking to the police, but hopefully I could be the one to change that.
And as soon as this COVID goes away, maybe you don't have to meet in the police station. Maybe you can meet somewhere pleasanter.
Oh, I can't wait for these Zoom meetings to end.
so can I just jump in? I'm a little like another part of my letter that I wrote was about the thin blue line image, right? That
I was actually, I wanted to get involved. I wasn't going to stay silent on that. So the thin blue line, if I may, Obviously, I'm going to let it, you wrote it in your letter. You kind of said I was considered a white supremacist and a racist, more or less.
I didn't say that. I said that's how that symbol can be interpreted.
Okay. Real quick, I will touch on that. I have a thin blue line flag on my personal Facebook page. You assigned a motivation to me that may have been unfair. Actually, you know what? I wouldn't say unfair. Maybe it was unintentional. I'm a police officer. I'm not a politician. I'm not a sociologist. I'm not cognizant what all the meanings are of the different symbols. All I know is that what the flag represents to me is that it's for all the police officers that died in the line of duty throughout the nation. Last year was historically a bad year for police officers killed in the line of duty, with over 336 deaths, 217 of them being COVID-19 alone. 2019, the line of duty deaths was 148. So we went from 148 to 336. And I believe the year before that was 185. I put that flag there because I'm in charge of morale in my police department. I want all my officers to know that I support them and I'm worried about their safety. Those police officers all died while protecting lives and doing their job. If there's good morale in the police department and it continues the way, then that benefits all the Lewisboro residents. So that's why that's there. And I'm sorry if it offended you.
But then you're boosting morale of your police department at the expense of BIPOC folks or other folks that might find that symbol to mean something else.
I know several BIPOC residents in town that fly that flag. This isn't, I'm not spewing Blue Lives Matter. I'm simply putting a thin blue line flag up that's been around since the late 1800s. And there's thin blue-red flag. A thin red flag. There's a thin gray flag. There's a thin green flag. I mean, the colors go on and on. One's for EMS, one's for corrections officers, one's for military, you name it. One's for fire. So it's just, why just the blue color? Why is that considered? I don't know. That's the way I take it. I apologize if you've taken it another way.
But okay, the question from my perspective is, do you not care that some people in town find that to be a different symbol?
Well, if it bothers people, then I will be more than willing to take it down. I personally didn't take it that way. I didn't realize I was upsetting people. I'm more than willing to have it removed.
Okay, because this goes back to my, the initial discussion, which is about the image that the police force is trying to put forth and the relationship you're concerned about having with all residents, including BIPOC residents who might find that symbol to be threatening. So
Okay.
it's counterintuitive. It's working against what you're stating is your goal. So either that's not really your goal, or
Are you sure that any symbol that Dave adopts to try to improve morale will not face the same reaction?
is that a question for me or for Dave?
Yes.
I'm focused on the symbol that's being used, right? The symbol that's in use right now, and that it has different meanings to different people.
That symbol's used all over. I believe Rybrook has it on the side of their police cars. I believe Westchester County has it on their police cars. They're all over. It's a law enforcement symbol. That's all that means. So
Well,
I don't find it being offensive. But
Ron raised the
happy to take it
term.
down.
Yeah, Ron raised the term before of leadership. So if there's something that's acceptable, more acceptable, where the chief can demonstrate his leadership and solidarity with people who lost their lives in law enforcement, then that's something that should be looked at. If nothing exists, then nothing exists. But your point that you're raising, Nikki, is that somebody else is going to look at it a particular way. I think that's being accepted in this discussion. The issue is, with that being so and accepting that to be so, is there something where the chief, in the exercise of his leadership and showing solidarity with police, is there another symbol that could be put out there to show that would be acceptable? So
wouldn't it make sense to be in solidarity with minorities in our community?
Nobody. The answer to the question is yes. But the question that I'm posing is, there's something where the chief, in exercising his leadership, could do something which is not causing offense to anyone.
I admit that I think, I don't know how many of the people in this room have been Army officers. I assume quite a few of you have. But the main mission is to maintain morale and improve morale, because you will only maintain discipline and get people to do the things you want them to do if you maintain a very high level of morale. And that's what I was always taught, and that's what I believe.
So at the expense of fear,
You've got to maintain the morale somehow, Nikki.
but you're saying that that's more important than addressing the fear that Charlotte talked about. And
No, I am not.
on that Ron
But I am
It's
saying
exactly what you're saying, Peter.
that one of the things that the chief must do is build morale.
Okay, so let's build morale in a way that doesn't put people in our that are minorities in our
So
community
what do you
out on their
suggest
heels.
when there's already a symbol around? I don't know, but maybe that symbol has become repulsive for some reason. But it's an old symbol. And
It doesn't matter if it's old or new or what. What matters is how it's interpreted by some people in our community now. And I can tell you that it's threatening. That it's
how
not.
many of those people also believe defund the police? How many of them are also just attacking policing? per
We're
se?
red herring, right? Let's stay on point to the conversation,
Okay, I
right?
just remember this from when I was fighting.
Okay.
You
How
have
is-
to
how is-
maintain morale.
How is this? The Lewisboro Police, I guess that's the official insignia, right?
I was just deleting my whole Facebook account. I don't care. It's not worth it. It's really not.
I
Okay,
mean,
I'm not on it. It's done.
I think that we all have to remember also at the beginning of last spring that there were spray painted signs with the word ACAB on it that were hung on the trees across from our police department, spray painted in the street that our police department's on. And I don't think that many of you know this, but there were some criminal mischief events that occurred on or near the property of our police chief, as in reaction to the things that were going on. So the morale of our police department in town has been a concern, because I believe that those things could be interpreted as threatening to our police department for actions of police officers that aren't even in our town. And I don't think there's a right or a wrong or a more important or a less important. Everybody in this town is supposed to be treated the same and equal, and everyone's supposed to be entitled to their beliefs, and everyone is supposed to be able to hold on to those symbols that make them feel safe and secure, promote morale in our police department, and make our residents feel safe.
But if
Some people may interpret it. I see in your letter that, you know, that Dave's display of this blue line on his Facebook page made you feel that you do not trust the police force in Lewisboro to protect you if you ever needed to call them. And I don't think that really, I mean,
so now you're
how,
going to
how well do you even know our police department? You haven't even been here that long. That's just,
All right, so you're
to me,
telling
unbelievable.
so you're telling me how to feel, Andrea?
No, I find it
Gaslighting.
very disappointing, because I don't believe that you know our police force that way. Charlotte's been here for how many years? And she doesn't feel that way about our police department.
But what about the BIPOC residents in town that just moved here last year? If they see that, what are they going to think?
Many of them spoke at our first meeting and they seemed
Exactly why
fine.
I'm here in this committee is to address exactly that relationship.
Okay.
Look, I mean, it's a symbol, Nikki. It's the same way as, you know, there's people that don't believe in God. Maybe your cross is offensive to them. It's a symbol, right? The cross is a symbol. You have a cross, I'm sure, a necklace, maybe that's offensive to somebody that doesn't believe in God.
The American flag, people are saying, is offensive these days. So it's all a matter of interpretation.
And I'm telling you that some people interpret that as threatening. And do we care? Are you saying you don't care?
Nikki, I'm going to be the bigger and better person in this, and I'm going to remove it. That's it. That's all it comes down to. And
I think that would be appropriate.
I apologize for the people I offended.
Okay. Remember that Dave is charged with maintaining morale and improving it.
And with protecting all citizens and preventing them
Yes,
from
but
feeling fear in our
also,
community.
in order to do that well, you must have high morale to protect citizens. It isn't an either or.
So
Not the one
many,
making it
many,
either.
can I just say something? Many police departments across the nation have banned officers from using the thin blue line flag while on duty or in any official police forum. Because Dave, I don't know if your Facebook is a private Facebook or if it's.
It is, it's a private.
It is,
it's a private
okay,
group.
so that is different, but so given, and that is the reason why so many police departments have banned the use of their officers wearing the flag while on duty is because it has been associated now with the symbol of support for white supremacy and against the movement of Black Lives Matter. That may not have been ever the intention behind that flag, but that is what it has come to symbolize. And that's why other police departments have acted this way in banning it. So thank you, Dave, for taking it down from your personal Facebook. And I think that's the better answer in these times.
Stephen.
Chief, I appreciate your leadership on that. You know, again, as the school district, we went through the mascot and just the power of symbols. And, you know, regardless of what anyone felt about it, it clearly was polarizing. And if we're going to come together, we can't be polarized. And I think one of the things that we have learned also this year in our work with NYU is that our work has got to be focused on impact, not intention.
All right. All right, anything else? I'd like to go back to, please, will anybody with a specific suggestion email it to Dave or me? Or call one of us.
Or send it to everybody, please. So
or send it to everybody.
Yeah.
Sorry, but some people have suggested this evening, I think, that they don't want broad publicity. And you don't have, you can send it to everybody, and that's really good. But if you don't want to do that, you can send it to one or the other of us.
So just overall, as far as where we are as a committee, where do we want to be in the process by the time of the next meeting in March?
We'd better, I think the next meeting is going to have to be before March.
Okay.
Dave, you may disagree, but I think the next meeting is going to have a document which we would decide, which we go through inch by inch. And then we have a meeting to which the entire public is invited to comment on it. Dave, okay. What do you think?
I agree. I agree. And then also regarding the policies that I got recommendations and updates from Patricia and Moria, I'm also working on those. And obviously when I do correct them, I'll send them back to you as well, so you can read them. I didn't forget it.
As a suggestion, at the time we have a working document, a working draft in advance of our next meeting, perhaps it could be forwarded out to the community so people can even give, if they'd like, anonymous written comments or input that could be put into the draft as we proceed through the process.
You'd like to do that before the committee's agreed anything?
Yes, I mean, I think if we have a draft that could be circulated contemporaneously when the meeting members are looking at it, at the same time, it could be a work in progress during, say, a week period that comments, it could be a working document that can be incorporated as we proceed up towards the next meeting. And also possibly that if it comes in, I don't know the best way for it to come in, or could come into the town and then circulate it out. And that way, members have an opportunity to review community input in real time and maybe adapt it into the document as we head towards the next meeting.
And
Right, Dave, a lot of logistical problems for you as far as typing, but
Yeah, I mean, he's got a job to do as well as this.
right. So I'm thinking that way. If we get a rough draft and we circulate it out at the same time the committee members are looking at it, then the public can comment at the same time. So we could pick up maybe some time at the back end that we're soliciting community input as we're working on the draft document.
But I think we're going to have a meeting.
Yeah,
at
sure,
which the
absolutely,
public
absolutely,
Is
Yeah.
invited.
absolutely.
Okay.
In part because we promised that at the beginning of this process.
So just tell the public if they have any input, so where they can forward any.
Yeah, so the email address is policereform@lewisboropd.com. Again, policereform@lewisboropd.com. It's actually on the 11 pages or so of the police plan, the police reform plan. It's on first or second page. So when I do post that, when we do have a rough draft, I could post that and everyone could click on it and see it as well.
Thank
Dave, can I make a suggestion? Does the police department have a post office box?
And,
A mailing address?
11 Main Street,
Okay, only because
either 11
some
Main
people,
Street in South Salem or 79 Mountain Road, either way.
all right, just to follow up with something that I had said, something that Richard had said, as far as people who may want to share stories anonymously, they may feel better putting a letter in the mail as opposed to sending it with an email address or an IP address attached to it. That's all, just another way of getting experiences into the hands of the committee without anyone necessarily have to attach their identity or their name to it.
So it's on there as well, Andrew. I'm looking at it right now. So the address is LPD Police Reform, 79 Mountain Road, South Salem, New York, 10590. Or they could just address it to myself.
Good.
Get a phone number on there as well. I didn't realize the phone number is not there, so that'll help. So.
Anybody want to say anything else? Because otherwise we'll close the meeting.
If all the feedback is going to chief, isn't that a problem if people are uncomfortable talking to the police?
Not if it's anonymous. If they don't attach a return address or their name to it, then they don't have to fear that someone's gonna reach out to them. I mean, in the alternative, they could send it to the supervisor or the town clerk to be funneled through. If there's various ways to get the information into the hands of the committee, if you feel addressing it directly to the police chief isn't going to work. Just a thought.
The town website has the capabilities of that as well, that you could reach out to somebody on the town website.
Town clerk is a good one. You can reach out to my confidential secretary, Mary Hafter. If you
Have
don't,
there been anyone sharing stories of what has happened to them?
I think
No.
only you and Ron, Charlotte, so far.
Right.
So
That's
maybe we
exactly
need
how it's going to stay. Watch.
You think so? Even
I've
if
been
it's
here 22
anonymous?
years. That's exactly how it's going to stay. No one's even going to do it anonymously.
Well, we
They're
have,
not.
if you read the thing too, I have third-party complaints. So if they don't feel comfortable and say you shared the story with somebody else, they could even come to me and make a complaint. So I'm willing to accept anything and everything and go from there. I want to know about everything, even if it's in the past, even before I was a chief, like, you know, Ron, with what you said, I want to know about it. I want to know about it. So
one of the big decisions that Dave has taken, which is contrary to quite a lot of other departments, is to accept anonymous comments, complaints.
Well, I mean, obviously nothing forecloses if somebody feels more comfortable based upon their relationship with a particular member or members of the committee, they could certainly funnel it through that way too. There's nothing stopping that either.
Okay.
See, that's why I like Peter's idea when he was saying that ethics committee. Rich, I was supporting you, but I just thought having one person there, you know, that's like going to the chief of police.
But that's
You
something that I
complain.
think, Ron, we would establish in this document.
No, I agree with you, Ron. The 3 sounds fine.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
don't,
And,
but
and
I'm,
there's a reason I say 3. I'm the oldest one on this committee, and I will challenge anyone who thinks you're close to my age.
You're not
I've been on
the oldest.
committees all my life, and I have found it is one of the few truisms. When it's more than 3, very little gets done. When it's one person, you get that person's bias. I've
just-
just
and-
found 3. And now most people would say that's my religious, and it's part of the Trinity, but there's something to be said for that. But before you all close, will someone just tell me one thing? I'm a Luddite, whatever the hell that means. No, I don't have a Facebook page. What the hell?
know what
happened
an
at the
email
beginning? What the hell happened at the beginning of this? What was going on my screen with this porno and other stuff? How did that
We
get in?
got hacked.
Yeah,
We
we
got
got
hacked by
hacked.
some kids in town.
Oh, okay. So it's not
Yeah.
just the Russians, it's our local kids.
I do have one more comment to add to Ron and to Rich. Every town does internal investigations differently. In Harrison, they have a personnel department. We don't have that here. People can write a complaint that it goes to the mayor/supervisor and or the personnel department and or to the chief of police. But ultimately, those complaints end up in the hands of the town/village attorney's office. I myself had to handle 2 sexual harassment internal investigations. And at a certain point, you compile a report, you do the interviews, you compile a report, and you give the findings to the town board, which, as you all know, town board is also police commissioners in town. So they are that determining body. They can't be the actual fact finder doing the investigation, but they can ultimately may determine what discipline, if any, is to be doled out for whatever the complaint might be or the allegations might be. In the town of Harrison, I know that if things get to, like we were talking about, maybe there aren't people within town that can look at circumstances fairly or without prejudice, then the town attorney will bring in an outside agency to come in and do a third-party investigation into certain things so that it takes it outside, and you have an unbiased eye looking and doing the investigation. So different towns handle things in different ways. I think there's a lot of different options to explore as potentials to add to or supplement what's in this draft. So.
it's unclear to me, did we address Charlotte's concern?
Of which one?
Because it's unaddressable, isn't it?
That people have a pathway to share information that's going to actually be used or is safe?
Oh, sorry. There is a pathway to share information. And the initial pathway is either via Dave or via some member of the town board or myself. If we cannot resolve it in any way, then it should go to that ethics committee.
Right.
What I was suggesting was something along the lines of what Andrea was just talking about is, a chief, is there a procedural manual that goes from the receipt of any complaint or a definition of what constitutes an incident that would need to be investigated? Is that addressed in the procedural manual already?
In the previous manual, there's not. I'm rewriting the policies and procedures.
Okay.
And that's why I gave myself like a year.
Yeah, so likening it to what we have to do with the hospital, there's quite an extensive plan with which not only defines incidents, but also then defines the role of each person within the structure, the investigator, the committee that reviews it, the report up from that, and then what happens with respect to once that report is accepted or asked for amendments or the corrective action plan, et cetera. So that, I think, is the task that we have to take, that needs to be taken on. Whether is to be done before April 1st is, you know, a question of where does it belong? Does it belong in the reform plan, or does it belong in the police revision, in the revision of the procedural manual, which isn't due until next year? Is that correct, Chief?
Yes.
Is this at all addressed in the contract, that are these discipline or any of those things incorporated into the union contract with the police department in the town?
It would have to be negotiated in the PBA contract. If we put a new mechanism in, I would need to get with the PBA's agreement.
But is there a mechanism in place in the current agreement?
Yes.
Is it possible, or would this committee be permitted to see that, or is that confidential?
No, it's not.
I think it's public knowledge. I'll find out.
Yeah.
Though.
I think that might be a good starting point for those of us to look at when we're considering all the different ideas that have been discussed, to see what already exists by union contract.
And I'm a member of Westchester County Chiefs Association, as well as New York State and international. So I could always send an email out and see what other towns are doing regards to a civilian overview or ethics. You know, I'm sure there's got to be something out there, and I can possibly get a copy of whatever their policy is.
Yeah,
And it varies all over the place from what I've been told.
Yeah.
Yeah, and obviously it should. If you're Mount Vernon, you have a far greater volume of complaint than we are likely to have.
So, anybody else?
Sorry, I mentioned Mount Vernon twice because I had a lunch meeting with the mayor of Mount Vernon today. And this contract and this requirement for this police review and reform came up. All right. Let's adjourn. And thank you very much for attending.
Thank you.
Dave, the thing we've got to do first is to set a date for a new meeting. As a discipline.
An hour.
Do we want to do it in 2 weeks?
Maybe a little tight. How about
Yeah.
3 weeks? 3 weeks from today?
That's
The 20,
That's sort of St. David's Day, isn't it?
February 25th.
Oh, February 25th would be fine. At least it isn't March 1st, which is St. David, which is your Saint's Day, Dave.
And then maybe we have a target date of a week before, where a draft could be circulated and put out for the public comment in advance of the 25th.
So you say 2/22, draft goes to public.
That doesn't give much time, though.
Yeah,
Okay.
so like 2 weeks, we could have 2 weeks for the draft that gets circulated in a week leading up to the next meeting for input.
So doesn't leave a lot of time.
No. Do we want to maybe move the meeting to
March 4th?
March 4th?
Sure. Is that
3-4 meeting and then a
What day of the week is March 4th?
It's a Thursday.
Thursday.
And then have the report in the hands of the public the week before, and that'll give you,
2/22?
yeah.
Does that work?
it gives a solid like 10 plus days? Okay.
Is that good enough? Everyone agree?
Yeah. I
Okay,
think so. That should give enough time to, hopefully for the public to have enough time to look at it, and hopefully we get, Charlotte, I'm trying to be more optimistic than you. I'm hoping we get more input before then, but maybe it'll prompt even more input after they look at a draft.
But
Well,
I hope.
yeah,
Don't
I
you-
think, yeah,
don't
I
you
think,
think we'll also have to have the final before the public for a certain amount of time before April 1st? You know,
well,
we'll
yeah,
have-
we're trying to get we're trying to get input before the next meeting.
exactly, but it'll be a
And-
two-step process before
Yes,
the public.
Yeah, I think we're gonna need probably a
another meeting
mid-March
after that.
meeting.
Yeah.
And then we also need a town board meeting as well to certify.
yes, remember, it's got to go in front of the town board and be approved.
Peter, do you know offhand what days the town board meetings are in in March?
No, but they're on probably the first Monday, which is which date?
The first,
The 1st of March.
In that case, the second board meeting will be on the 14th, 15th.
15th is the Monday.
Yeah, 15th. And we'd better darn well have an agreement on that day so we can send it in to the state.
Okay.
So should we have another meeting the 11th then, March 11th?
That might make sense.
Yeah. I just pulled it up. I was looking.
So 222 for a draft for distribution, 3/4 for next meeting, 3/11 to finalize in preparation for the 3/15 town board meeting, right?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Meetings could be on a different night and not all on Thursdays. Thursdays is a conflict for me, so I have to sacrifice something to be here.
Okay.
I mean, could the instead of March 11th, could it be March 10th? Or is that too soon?
Well, that's fine.
Or was that the date we were talking about? I'm confused.
March 11th was the date, the final draft date was a Thursday. You're saying March 10th?
Yes,
That works for me.
that's a Wednesday.
Well, when is the next meeting? The 4th?
Yeah.
Or are we moving it to a Wednesday?
222 is the target draft. 3/4 for our next meeting, 3/10 to finalize the draft in preparation for the 3/15 town board meeting.
Okay.
sounds like a plan.
And Nikki, is the 3/4 okay for you though? Because you just said Thursdays is a conflict. Do you want us to move that meeting as well?
If we could, it's fine, but I don't know if maybe Wednesdays are problematic for somebody else. So I can sacrifice some, but
I prefer Wednesdays to Thursdays, quite honestly.
All right, so let's go 3/3.
Okay.
So 222 is the draft for the public, 3/3 is a meeting. And then 3/10 is the final meeting with the draft, and then 3/15 is the town board meeting, which we don't have to be on, but you're more than welcome.
Okay.
I'm just curious, and this is maybe for a question for Peter, is there a possibility of getting an extension from the state if we need one?
No,
I was on a meeting today, actually, and that was like one of the big questions, because there's some departments and towns that haven't even touched this yet.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, it's
Probably comports with the state budget requirement is April 1, right?
I don't know, but the odds on getting Cuomo to move a date which he's already issued an edict on are slight.
Peter, the town board meetings are the 8th and the 20,
Oh, they're on the 8th? Okay,
22nd, not the 15th.
okay.
sorry. I'd assumed it was the first Monday. We're making the first Monday the 8th, and then. Oh. All right, Dave, you and I are going to have to sort this out and circulate it.
That's fine. We'll send an email out to everybody. And
Because obviously, I'm not doing a very good job of remembering when my town board meetings are.
okay.
All right, good night, everybody.
Mr. Ross and Mrs. Ray, thank you again for your input. I'm sure it's really hard for you to come out and say that. So again, thank you.
Charlotte, are you still there, Charlotte?
I am. I'm Mrs. B and Cone, Dave.
I'm sorry. I see
But you can
Ray.
call me Charlotte. You can call me
It's
Charlotte.
blocking off. I
You
apologize.
owe me, Charlotte.
I do.
Yes.
I do. I definitely do.
All right.
All right, I
All
got
right,
you.
Dave, we'll talk offline, okay?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Ross.
Take care.
Thank you both for showing and
night,
your
everybody.
contribution.
night.
And also Nikki.
All right.
Good night.
Good night, all.
Good night.